Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. This was it. This was the game that could have had it all. Insane variety in the gameplay, a state-of-the-art engine, a thrilling story of revenge making men into demons, all directed by a genius working at the top of his game. You saw the trailers. This game could have been no qualifiers the greatest game ever made.
No. Sorry.
Despite the near universal 10 out of 10 ratings, this game's story stinks. It's busted on a fundamental level, and I'm certainly not the only one to notice it. Super Bunny Hop, Hyper Bit Hero, and the Gaming Brit have made some really on-point observations about this game and its story. That's why instead of uploading a big picture kind of analysis, I'm putting Kojima's swan song under the microscope, and will be critiquing the Phantom Pain story in thorough detail. If you couldn't already guess, there will be heavy spoilers ahead. Part 1. Venom Snake is not Big Boss. The Bomb. The big dumb twist that ruins everything. The protagonist of The Phantom Pain is not Big Boss. He's a body double who received plastic surgery to look like Big Boss. But child competitor, Venom is Big Boss in spirit. It's a postmodern mindfuck, just like MGS2. Hold on, we'll get to that. But first, let's try to understand the twist in a literal plot sense. What happened and why in the story's canon. Zero and Ocelot are going to protect the real Big Boss by making a body double of Big Boss, and then they'll have the real boss, the guy they're trying to protect, stand directly next to the body double who's being actively hunted for. The most dangerous possible thing Big Boss could be doing during this hospital massacre is to stand next to his new Phantom. From the word go, this protection twist makes zero sense. Speaking of, this whole plan was Zero's idea. Why would Big Boss trust him? Jack was in a coma for 9 years. From his perspective, Cypher just destroyed Mother Base and killed all his men. I'm not trying to nitpick. We'll give Kojima the benefit of the doubt that these inconsistencies are in service of something more important later. So what's the payoff of this twist? Well, you see, the idea is for Venom to build Diamond Dogs as a distraction from the real Big Boss building a nation-sized military state called Outer Heaven that's much larger than Diamond Dogs. You could go on about all the ways that the plot doesn't make sense forever. Really, here's 2 podcasts where me and some other folks do just that for 4 combined hours. The ending chapters of The Phantom Pain were clearly rushed, but it doesn't explain or excuse this twist on a plot level. This turn that was planned from the very, very beginning just isn't justified by the plot it's a part of. But that's okay, Metal Gear plots are allowed to have some shortcomings in the making sense department. What really matters are the characters. Which brings us to part 2, ruining Big Boss's character. Which Big Boss, you ask, stupidly, with hope in your dumb eyes? Both. But let's start with the OG Big Boss, Jack, Naked Snake. He was a villain and a legend, larger than life. Snake Eater humanized him, and that was interesting. Peace Walker hardened him, and that was interesting too. The Phantom Pain turns him into a coward. You're in danger at this hospital, Big Boss? That's okay, just run away on this cool motorcycle. You want to build a military nation, Big Boss? That's okay. Here's an elaborate distraction called Diamond Dogs. Go ahead and build Outer Heaven completely unchallenged and unnoticed. Characters are interesting when they face obstacles. That was part of the magic of Metal Gear Solid 3. Jack faces off against the super elite Cobra unit and his mentor, and a fiendish Zapizu Russian. He's completely outmatched, but he overcomes these obstacles. We care about him for it. Metal Gear Solid 5's twist basically only serves to remove obstacles from Big Boss's path, so that he can make Metal Gear 1 happen as easily and cleanly as possible. I kind of always expected, and I know I'm not alone in this, that we would eventually see Big Boss transform from the sly rookie he was in Metal Gear Solid 3 to a despot with warped ideals haunted by his past. That doesn't happen. Instead, he just becomes an unlikable guy. He steals his medic's identity and runs for the hills because it's convenient and easy. There's no 2 ways around it. The real Big Boss is just a coward. This ending fucked him hard. But what about the other Big Boss? Part 3. Venom has no arc. There was legitimate potential for Venom's story to be good. And I don't mean it could have been good as a postmodern mindfuck, which again I'll get to later. I mean it could have been a good story about a character. The final conversation between Ocelot and Kaz hints that Kaz, Venom, and Solid Snake will somehow be pit against the real Big Boss.
Big Boss can go to hell. I'll make the Phantom and his son stronger to send him there.
Venom and Kaz seeking revenge against the true Big Boss, the man who stole everything from them. Kaz's limbs, Venom's identity, you know, something that would tie in with the game's stated themes of revenge. Nah. A tape from Big Boss at the end convinces Venom to throw his life away with a smile in outer heaven at the hands of Solid Snake, which serves the dual purpose of negating any possible impact of Venom's story, and making the true Big Boss even more of a pathetic, contemptible coward. What would have happened if Venom killed Big Boss and assumed the mantle completely? It'd be out there, but it would turn Venom into a demon and a legend in the same act, and give us one solitary reason to buy the cop-out "you are Big Boss too because Big Boss is more a legend and a title than a man" garbage that the game throws out there at the last moment. I'm just spitballing here, but that's the thing. It's easy to ramble on about different ways this game could have ended and come up with some legitimately promising story ideas. That shouldn't be possible in any story. By the time a story is complete, its events should feel inevitable. That doesn't mean that they're the product of fate or something. It means that every choice, every turn, and every twist should add up to a whole that's unimpeachable. By the end of Metal Gear Solid 3, there was no other way things could have gone. The boss's love for her country, for her comrades, and for Snake all shine through her actions. The twist that the boss was loyal to America the whole time is protected by ironclad character logic. There is no other way her story could have ended. A good story feels unbudgeably right. The tale of Venom Snake is just full of but why nots, why couldn'ts, and what if they just. Part 4, Execution. Mission 46, Truth, the man who sold the world, manages the impossible by making this twist boring. If you're going to torpedo an entire game's worth of story and characters, you could at least make it exciting, but no, you have to play the hospital prologue again. Besides what you see in the mirror the doctor holds up, it plays out exactly the same way as the beginning of the game. Even the button prompts are still there. The actual execution of the twist is to take the scene with the mirror from the beginning and say, fuck you, that's not how it actually happened, this is what really happened. There are no clues to pick up on or details to analyze, it's just the same thing but different. And maybe I'm just really good at the game, but by the final mission, I hadn't forgotten how to look around using the analog stick. It's like they just took the same piece of code for the prologue and copy-pasted it. It's unbelievable how lazy this is. I watched the cutscenes intently, trying to find some minute difference, the tiniest detail that would make Mission 46 anything special. Nothing. Eventually, I started skipping them because I was bored, plain and simple. The very last story experience in the very last Metal Gear Kojima Directs should not leave me bored enough to skip the cutscenes. What happened here? Well, let's step back and consider that question. Chapter 2 was clearly rushed. In addition to having far fewer story missions, they were spread apart by grinding through side ops or higher difficulty bonus missions from Chapter 1. We also know by the unfinished Mission 51 on the bonus disc that crucial story content was cut due to time and budget constraints. I think the ending we got might have suffered from similar cuts. When the opening cutscene ended and control was handed over, I could have sworn we were going to play through the same sequence, but as Ishmael, leading Ahab. But no, it was exactly the same. And then the only other cutscene that's different from the prologue is when Ishmael is rescued from the ambulance by Ocelot, which, like so much in this game, doesn't make any fucking sense. When does this take place? Half an hour after the ambulance crashes? What? Did he leave Big Boss in the ambulance until daytime and come back for him later? This stupid scene is just a setup for the motorcycle image from the trailer, assets they'd already made. There was meant to be more game here. There was supposed to be more story. But instead, this huge epic had to be closed with a quick, clumsy twist that doesn't go anywhere. Again, this doesn't excuse the creative misguidance, and there clearly is a lot of that, but what we got was rushed and could have been better. Part 5, the bad twist that's not a twist. The possibility that the protagonist of The Phantom Pain isn't Big Boss was on people's minds for years.
What about him?
The medic on the chopper of Ground Zeroes was obviously Kiefer Sutherland pitched down. Ishmael was also clearly Kiefer Sutherland. The avatar creation at the beginning obviously suggests something isn't right about our character's identity. And then there's the tape about Eli's DNA test, where you find out he's not related to Venom at all. At that point, it was a sure thing in my mind. I knew I wasn't Big Boss. It didn't bother me though, because from the time that the very first evidence of a weird identity story came to light, which by the way is before the game came out, I always thought Kojima would make something of it. I thought, boom, there it is, the twist. I said almost word for word, so Big Boss is more of a legend than a man, more of a title than a person. Venom truly is Big Boss in every sense of the word besides genetics. But I wasn't exactly right, because after all of that, I said, I wonder what Kojima will do with all this. The answer is nothing. The final mission, which comes after the tape that beats you over the head with this twist, has no other ambition than to reveal to the player what they already know, that they aren't Big Boss. This ending means nothing. A twist isn't a story, it's just that, a twist, a turn that makes you reevaluate a story. To make yet another comparison to Metal Gear Solid 3, at the end of that game, in that iconic cutscene where you get a twist, you learn that the boss was a true patriot. It changes everything. It changes the meaning of everything the boss told you. It changes the truth of Jack's relationship with the boss. It makes the subtle ways the boss protects Jack in spite of her mission heartbreaking. Now let's look at Metal Gear Solid 5. The twist. Venom Snake is not Big Boss. So what? This doesn't let us revisit the game's story and view it in a new light. It forces us to toss most of it in the garbage. It's just such a damn shame. Part 6. The meta-narrative interpretation. People have tried to say that this ending is a successful execution of a meta-narrative. This is the angle. Venom is not Big Boss, but he comes to embody him metaphorically, much as the player does when they pick up the controller and play as the legend. It's a love letter to the fans, thanking them for the legend that they helped create. I get it. This is obviously something that the ending was going for, but that doesn't mean it succeeded. In fact, I'd say it failed horribly. There was very little thematic build-up for meta-narrative in this game. In fact, I'd say all the emotional investment this game gets from the player comes directly from characters and plot, not from the player's attachment to the game as a product in the real world. Dave Thier defends the Phantom Pain's ending in Forbes. He writes, Metal Gear Solid has always been something of a meta-narrative first and a literal narrative second. Wow, that line, that Metal Gear is a meta-narrative before it's a literal narrative, I think embodies the fundamental miscalculation at the heart of Metal Gear Solid 5's story. Metal Gear is not a meta-narrative first, not in the slightest. Putting Metal Gear Solid 2 aside for a moment, Metal Gear has always been a story about characters. Metal Gear Solid 1, 3, Peace Walker, and even 4 for how bloated it was, were games about characters and warfare. The meta stuff, the press the select button moments, those aren't the main course of Metal Gear, they're the dessert. They make the series unique, but they aren't the reason we care about it. When I think about what makes Metal Gear, I think of the stealth gameplay first, but then I think of Sniper Wolf's death, Solid Snake's story, Big Boss saluting the boss's tombstone. The ending of Metal Gear Solid 5 sacrifices that substance in favor of a big dumb twist that wasn't even original. It'd been done already, in the same series no less. Metal Gear Solid 2 carefully built up to its ending. Everything feels artificial, the dialogue is slightly off-kilter, it's brilliantly done. Raiden throws away his dog tags that bear the player's name and becomes his own person. Venom's story doesn't get the benefit of that resolution. The only thing for the player to chew on is that twist. And the dog tags are way cooler than a cute message from Big Boss on the back of a photo. There clearly are elements of meta-narrative in the Phantom Pain, but they don't add up to a good meta-narrative. It's just distracting and stupid, and leaves the real narrative empty. Part 7. Lack of resolution. Another point Dave Thier argues, quote, "It's not really important when things make no sense or plot lines go unresolved," end quote. This would be true if we had a strong meta-narrative to latch onto, but we don't. It's hot air. That considered, let's look at exactly what is left unresolved in the real narrative. The most obvious loose end is Eli and Psycho Mantis escaping with Metal Gear Sahelanthropus. This is somewhat forgivable, because we get the benefit of an unfinished cutscene to give us some closure there, but it's comical to think that if someone has played every Metal Gear game, but not viewed anything outside the games themselves, then they're left with a gap of several decades where Liquid Snake is at large with a nuclear-armed Metal Gear. But less noticeable are the threads that just vanish. Code Talker doesn't matter after Chapter 1, really. What about Zero? What about the battle gear that Huey builds? Absolutely nothing comes from it. Worst of all though, remember the Moby Dick stuff? There were obvious parallels between the Phantom Pain story and Melville's literary classic. Losing limbs, fixating on revenge, obsession can destroy a man. Kojima knew all this. That's why we got Moby Dick Studio, Ishmael, Ahab, Pequod, Queequeg, and the whale swallowing the helicopter. So how does this parallel pay off? Well, it doesn't. Venom doesn't get consumed by revenge. Actually, now that I think about it, Part 8. "'Cause I'm already a demon. But not really. But I said so please believe me." The fundamental promise and theme of this game was Big Boss becoming a demon. Well, not only does Big Boss not become a demon, nobody does. Venom does not do a single demonic thing in the whole game. In fact, he doesn't even do anything morally questionable. He doesn't kill African child soldiers. Sure, he has something to feel guilty over when he kills his own men, but that's out of necessity. He has to do it to stop the spread of a potentially world-ending contagion. Still though, that would have been a good jumping off point for Venom to grow distant from reality and start obsessing over protecting his men at all costs. You know, doing terrible things but finding justification for it in his comrades. Wouldn't that have been interesting? Well, it didn't happen. He even chooses to exile Huey Emmerich when there is some substantial evidence that he both betrayed MSF and killed the mother of his child. He exiles Huey, a genius who develops bipedal nuclear weapons for anyone who holds a gun to his head, who both hates Snake and has an intimate knowledge of Diamond Dog's operations and the location of Mother Base. That Huey. He lets him go on a little boat with some food and water. Yeah, there was a neat moment when his robotic legs fall in the water, but overall this was just another missed opportunity. And speaking of, Part 9, Wasted Potential. This game reeks of promise that's never realized.
Something sweet. I can smell it even through the mask.
You get an earth-shattering twist, but it goes nowhere. You recover the Man on Fire's body, and nothing comes of that. Remember Battle Gear? The cut Mission 51 looked awesome. So much for that. But then there's the smaller stuff. I like the end of Quiet's story. She's basically the only character with an arc. Anyway, the dramatic thrust of this scene is that Venom gets bitten by a snake, and Quiet needs to speak English to get him help. But didn't this game have a whole wildlife system? Why is this the only part of the game with a snake? What should have been a completely gripping and immersive moment just had me asking, wait a minute, I don't remember there being any other snakes in this game. That shouldn't happen. Mother Base feels empty. Why can't we see Ocelot out and about like in the trailers? What happened to the Ocelot unit that was in one cutscene? Speaking of cutscenes, where was the nuclear trailer? What happened to the Mother Base customization we were promised? Where was that return to Camp Omega? You could go miles and miles down this road, as many people understandably have been. But in the big picture, this game is full of characters that go nowhere. Ocelot does basically nothing. How did Kojima manage to make Ocelot, of all people, a boring character? Kaz realizes that the phantom pain of what he's lost will never go away, but that's a minor development at most, and his rash, revenge-obsessed attitude is pretty flat all the way through. Venom calls himself a demon at the very beginning of the game, for no reason, skims past some genuinely great raw story material, and then settles for being smirky fuckface player insert fake boss. There's just too much that this game could have done with its characters and their stories that is immediately obvious. Just go back, rewatch the Red Band trailer. This game has a distracting amount of potential. So much, it's hard to even focus on the bad story we got. Instead, I just keep fixating on what we didn't get. Part 10, the big deal. So what's the big deal? What's the point of all this bitching and moaning and nitpicking? I guess I'm just not willing to throw up my hands and say, oh Kojima, what a nutty meta story, and chalk things up to love it or hate it. The meta-narrative twisteroo comes out of nowhere, it means nothing, and totally supplants what could have been a great story. It's a big dumb black hole that swallows up Metal Gear Solid 5's emotional core, the character drama that's always driven this series. A game that plays this well, looks this good, and has such a fantastic first chapter shouldn't be capable of such a pitiful ending. It's so sad that this series has to go out with a wink and a nod when it could have gone out with a bang.